Just yesterday, Bill Gates was on Capitol Hill answering questions about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Today, we're going to be diving in to what was said while he was there and see how deeply he was actually involved with Epstein, or if it was all just blackmail. As we dive into the news today, I'm starting off with my coffee. Let me know what drink you have in your hand. Now, let's get into the news.
Glad to be here voluntarily to testify, to help with the committee's work. I'll start with an opening statement in the hearing room. I hope my testimony is helpful to the important work of the committee to find justice for the victims.
All right, so he starts out saying exactly what he should say, right? Very politically correct there. He starts by saying he's here by his own will. He's not being forced to be here, which shines a positive light on him. He mentions the victims, that he's doing this to try and give some help to the victims. Both of those statements kind of leave a shining light on him as if he actually didn't do anything wrong. So he's starting things out, trying to make people believe that he's innocent in all of this.
Lawmakers have a lot of questions for Bill Gates. He appears in the Epstein files hundreds of times. He's referenced in emails, in phone call invitations, and calendar invites. But the most explosive allegations are these two draft emails that Epstein allegedly was going to send himself but never sent. These are unverified claims where Epstein claims that he helped Gates to be set up with women, and he also helped Gates get medication to hide a sexually transmitted infection from his then wife, Melinda Gates. Now, Bill Gates denies those claims vehemently, says they are completely false, but has said he regrets ever interacting with Gates.
In his opening remarks, Bill Gates told lawmakers he was never aware of Epstein's crimes, and that he himself, Gates, never victimized anyone. He gave a little bit of a background on how they got introduced back in 2011. He said that their interactions, for the most part, were pretty limited, and that all of that came to an end in December of 2014. This is something else that Gates told lawmakers. He said, "I learned Epstein had become aware of sensitive information about my personal life, including the fact that I had been unfaithful in my marriage. Epstein was working to use information about my infidelities, in addition to many lies that he layered on top, to pressure me to re-engage with him."
All right, so it seems like Bill Gates, is putting out the puzzle pieces to show that Epstein was trying to blackmail him. Bill Gates, being someone that's extremely powerful, having blackmail over him could be very valuable to someone like Epstein. So it all does kind of make sense. But he's also trying to wash his hands clean of any wrongdoing outside of his infidelities with his wife that he's already admitted that actually took place. Now, one thing that we're talking about here are two unsent emails. So essentially, these are just written documents, kind of like a diary of Epstein, which we don't know the truth of. It could be 100% fabricated, or it could be 100% true, and that's going to be very difficult to determine.
I think what we can say right now is that Mr. Gates does believe that Mr. Epstein would write emails that were oftentimes untrue. I think he spoke to that in some of the questioning, that he denies obviously some of those claims, and that he felt that Mr. Epstein would write emails to himself and just say things that were not true or didn't.
This has obviously been a really embarrassing ordeal for Bill Gates. I'm told by a source that his lawyer jumped in at one point and said he's not going to answer questions about affairs that are not directly related to the Epstein saga. Epstein also, I think, is aware that his reputation has taken a hit. He said, quote, "Meeting with Epstein was a grave error in judgment." And he also said he's now being more careful about the kinds of people that he associates with.
I mean, that's really easy to say after the fact. And this is something that a lot of people that are being accused of things relating to Epstein are saying, that they didn't know of what he was doing and that they made a terrible judgment error in having any type of relationship, friendship with him.
Found him cooperative and found him to be pretty credible. The sad thing is he basically admitted that he carried out a relationship with Epstein even after he knew that Epstein had been convicted of a sexual crime. And the reason he did it is he said Epstein knew a lot of billionaires, a lot of donors, and he wanted to raise money from them for his philanthropies. And this just shows some of the moral bankruptcy at the time, where it's not that Gates committed any illegal act, but he was willing to overlook the crime to raise money for his charities.
Did he ever attend, as far as you know, any of these parties where there were these underage girls or women who were being trafficked? Was there any? I mean, he has admitted, Gates, to infidelities, but I don't think he's admitted to infidelities, to cheating on his wife with any of the women who were trafficked by Epstein, right?
Yes, and he was very clear. I asked him point blank, did Epstein ever introduce him to any women underage or just women who he had affairs with? And he said absolutely not. And he said he never was on the island and that Epstein did not in any way facilitate any of his affairs.
Three of the four House Republicans who joined you to force the release of the Epstein files are soon no longer going to be in office. Obviously, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene quit after she had a falling out with Trump. Thomas Massie lost his seat after he had a falling out with Trump, and Trump endorsed his opponent. And now Congresswoman Nancy Mace is leaving. She ran for governor in South Carolina. She finished 5th in the Republican primary. Obviously, Trump supported the woman who won. There were obviously different factors contributing to all these exits, but Mace has made it clear that she thinks the Epstein episode cost her politically. I guess Lauren Boebert is the only one left right now. Are you concerned about losing any other Republicans who were allies in pushing transparency for this?
It's sad to me that they paid that price. I mean, some people in my own party sometimes criticize me when I say that they showed a lot of courage, but the reality is they did. I mean, Thomas Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene literally gave up their seats, and I believe Nancy Mace that it hurt her among Republicans, and all of them stood with survivors. Look, I got $1 million or so spent against me because of my work on Epstein and also calling for a billionaire's tax. I got 62% of the vote, and a Democratic challenger got 6%, but I'm running in a Democratic constituency. But being a Republican, taking on Donald Trump, was an act of political courage.
And it's a shame, actually, that being in the same party as our current president, if you are going to give some transparency to something that's not agreed upon within the party, these people that they just mentioned did put their jobs at risk. And unfortunately, they lost their jobs, which is not going to help the cause for more things to come to the light of the Epstein files. Not saying that more won't come to light, but the removal of those three is definitely not going to help the process.
Bill Gates wrapped up in this in a way that we know was related to the demise of his own marriage. Melinda French Gates has been out there in some cases asked questions about his behavior in ways that I think raised some eyebrows. What stood out to you about what Gates told the committee and what it says about, the fact that he was there for as many hours as he was?
Yeah, I don't know that there are going to be specific leads that the committee is going to follow up on as far as we know right now, and we'll know for sure once the transcripts come out, whether he referred the committee to specific people that he saw engaging in bad behavior. But what I think we are seeing today is a full pattern of powerful people, people who were very close to Jeffrey Epstein, people who spent a lot of time with him, certainly wanted to be invited to all of his dinners in New York City, now saying years later, we were never aware of the crimes that he was committing. And I think if I'm Bill Gates, I'm pretty lucky that the emails where some of the more salacious and unverified claims about Bill Gates appear to have been written by Epstein to himself, and the fact that Epstein is dead. You can deny and deny and deny if you are convinced that there is no physical proof to the contrary. But I thought Bill Gates talking about how he was initially introduced to Epstein was really interesting. He said it was in 2011, and he did know that Epstein had some prior legal issues, but he decided not to scrutinize those matters further. Those legal issues, to be clear, is that Jeffrey Epstein in 2009 was convicted of soliciting prostitution from a minor. These are not just minor legal issues. He was a registered sex offender. So I just think the sort of willful ignorance of powerful people when money is involved is a conversation we need to keep having.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That's what's been sitting on my mind for the last few minutes. Bill Gates knew that Epstein was a criminal and that it was for pretty disgusting things. And he probably knew that the crime that he was facing was actually a lot worse than he was charged. But because money was on the line and because it was for philanthropy, he was willing to take his morals, put them aside, and then move forward with that relationship. Epstein knew a lot of rich people, and that is how he gained a lot of his power. Now, would I be really curious to see if there are any victims or any survivors that would put Bill Gates' name on the table? I don't think we've heard from any of the survivors or victims yet that Bill Gates was one of the people that abused any of the women that were trafficked. Once we do hear from some women saying that they were abused potentially by Bill Gates, then we could have that conversation. But I think as of right now, we're just looking at 2 unsent emails from a dead man.
Jody, I mean, what do you think it says? I mean, the story, this is of course part of the book that your colleagues Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan it's going to be a blockbuster, let me tell you, it's coming out in a couple of weeks. They wrote that J.D. Vance, the vice president, was particularly panicked about what was going on, and that he even floated enlisting Tucker Carlson to interview Ghislaine Maxwell in prison. Vance thought that it might help the president if Maxwell was willing to state Trump had not been part of any wrongdoing. Epstein. What does this all say?
Well, I was riveted by Maggie and Jonathan's excerpt. Their book is called Regime Change. I think it is going to be a blockbuster. And what was so interesting was that you could really see President Trump losing control of the Epstein story paragraph by paragraph as they give this internal account of the Trump team trying to deal with it. And part of what is so fascinating about it is that, listen, we're living through a presidentially led backlash to Me Too, right? The president has appointed himself the chief opponent of this movement. But then what happened is it turned out that people really cared about the Epstein files. They were grossed out by the idea of young women being manipulated by the powerful and the wealthy. And part of the lasting power of Me Too is that there's a lot of empathy, especially for very young victims. And so to see the president sort of hit by, you could almost call it a backlash to the backlash, was really interesting.
Now that's a good start, getting into what Bill Gates was saying and where things lie regarding him and Epstein. It also brought in our current president and the administration as well. But I want to dive a little bit deeper and watch this right here as we get a little bit more context on the situation. And remember, as always, all of the videos that I use are going to be sourced in the description of this video.
Bill Gates says his interactions with Jeffrey Epstein were limited, also hinting at possible blackmail or extortion, saying Epstein tried to use information about his infidelities to re-engage him once he broke off contact. Gates meeting behind closed doors with the House Oversight Committee earlier today. Scripps News senior national correspondent Alex Miller was there. She's live on Capitol Hill. And Alex, what are you hearing about what Gates has told lawmakers?
My sources are telling me that Gates has told lawmakers that he had no involvement in any of the allegations against Jeffrey Epstein. He says he never visited him on his island, in his Palm Beach home, or at Zorro Ranch. Now, still, as you mentioned, he did say that he was being blackmailed by Jeffrey Epstein when Epstein found out about his extramarital affairs. Look, Bill Gates is mentioned in the Epstein files nearly 3,000 times. And remember, we do not have all of the files, but there are, he is mentioned in calendar invites, in emails back and forth, and there are photos of him in there as well. And so the committee was asking him, what did he know and when did he know it?
Now, it's worth stating that although Bill Gates never made it to any of the properties besides any maybe potentially New York properties of Epstein, it doesn't mean that crimes weren't committed, because we already know that many, many terrible things happened in that New York apartment as well.
He admitted that he knew of Mr. Epstein's reputation. He admitted that he knew that he had been convicted of sexual crimes. But ultimately, in his words, he viewed this narrow relationship as being an acceptable means to access wealthy donors.
And of course, looking at that idea of being blackmailed by Epstein, we know that Melinda Gates, now the ex-wife of Bill Gates, saying that the relationship that the two had impacted their marriage. Gates has called this a huge mistake, but they became friends in 2011. That is when their friendship began. Now, that was years after Epstein had pleaded guilty in Florida to solicitation of prostitution of a minor. And so there have been questions about how much Gates knew about the guilty plea, as well as what else he had going on in the years after that. Now, there was an email in about 2013 that he has been asked about. The officials, Chairman Comer has said that this is something they're going to talk to him about, this email from Epstein to Bill Gates about the dissolution of their friendship. That has certainly raised some eyebrows, and that's something that he is being asked about. But again, we don't have a lot of details because this is behind closed doors. It is not being taped. So the only way, Del, that we are going to have access to the information about this is from the Democrats or Republicans who come out, or whenever we do eventually get that transcript. But that transcript is controlled by the Republicans, so they'll decide whether we see the whole thing and when we see it. But one member of Congress said that he looked worn down and stressed as he testified. Another one saying that he looked combative as he spoke to members of Congress.
Alex, members and survivors keep saying over and over and over again, they're going to name names. Is Gates' testimony leading to any other people?
Great question.
Well, from what we have heard so far, it is in the sense that he gave names for the committee to look into. It's unclear what that really means, but he said that he knew people in Epstein's orbit who may have been involved in this. According to Democrats who spoke at the microphone a couple of minutes ago, they said that there are questions that they have for other people, people who might have worked for the Gates Foundation. Gates himself saying that there are people he knew personally who may have been victims of Epstein's abuse. And this is not the first time that we are seeing this. We had testimony yesterday from Leslie Groff, who was Jeffrey Epstein's longtime assistant. Now we're hearing from members of the committee that because of her testimony, they want to call in attorney and longtime friend of Epstein, Alan Dershowitz. And after Pam Bondi, the former attorney general's testimony a couple of weeks ago, we now know that they want to call in the acting attorney general and the nominee for attorney general, Todd Blanche, about his handling of this. This is something Democrats have been calling for quite some time. They said today that they're very happy that the chairman is now on board with this.
This is actually a great thing because when you think about it, anyone that we have that's willing to speak in court regarding anything relating to the Epstein files, and I'm talking about people that were in some way involved in the network, even if Gates was not doing anything wrong, eyes were there. He got to see a lot of different people that engaged with Epstein in different ways, and he can give, or anyone that gets in front of the court can give those names to be looked into and to be questioned as well. And eventually we're going to start getting some people that are going to talk and say actually what was going on and put some of these puzzle pieces together.
Alex, before you go, we've heard from the former president, Bill Clinton, also the former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. The current president is mentioned in the files tens of thousands of times. Any chance that we will hear from him?
I think it will likely be difficult to get him seated here. I think you have a Republican-led committee, and we've seen over the last few months how fractured this committee has really become. So my guess, if I was a betting woman, would be that we do not see him as long as Republicans are in control of this committee.
And that's the truth of it right there. We're most likely not going to see Trump on the stand. So what we know is that Bill Gates made some bad decisions. He knew who he was getting involved with. He knew that the person has done terrible things in the past. I'm talking about Jeffrey Epstein. But even with that knowledge, he chose to maintain that relationship for his philanthropy, basically for money and donations for whatever causes he had going on at the time. He admits that it was a bad decision to do that. But of course, these are the things that he should say and things that he probably had prepared to say. There's no hard evidence that Bill Gates did anything wrong outside of the infidelity with his wife, which has already been admitted. But regarding any of the women that Epstein was in charge of or any of the abuse to some of the survivors, nothing was actually placed right there. But we can hope that some of the names that were shared behind closed doors are actually going to lead to more information being told. I'm actually diving deeper into this story. That video is taking a few days to put together, so you should see it very soon. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so when it does drop, you don't miss it. And in the meantime, you could check out this one for deeper details on the Epstein files.